On the 22nd of November 1969, Ottawa's first community channel was born. Its beginnings were humble, to say the least. A small, cramped boardroom doubled up as the studio. There were 2 television cameras, and basically that was it. No editing, no graphics, no switching from camera to camera. It was, as the CRTC chairman of the time called it, bare bones media.
Well, here we are 40 years later. Rogers TV isn't so bare bones anymore, but the channel remains a little more modest than perhaps its glossy neighbours on the dial. As the first community television station in the city, Rogers has always kept a local first focus. And in November, the station will mark 40 years on the air. That's quite an accomplishment. And they've already begun the celebration by airing a series of classic clips. That's hosted by Catherine Clark, whose voice I believe we were just listening to. Arthur Leviton is a longtime volunteer with Rogers Television. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Terry Tucker is a volunteer turned staff member. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
And Arthur, tell me how you started.
Well, a friend of mine, Ian White, was running as a political candidate in one of the elections, and one of the features of the election was on-air television debate, all candidates debate. Mm-hmm. And when we went into the station, it just floored me. And the station manager, Bruce Matheson, came to me afterwards because Ian was running for the Green Party and asked if we would be interested in doing a show on the environment. And I said, sure. And he called me a number of days later and asked me if I wanted to see a mobile, which I had no idea what it was. I said yes, and he told me to go to the CRTC because they were broadcasting the CRTC, one of the hearings. And I went there like about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was just wandering around, and Lynn Whitehead, who was a volunteer coordinator, came to me and asked me what I was doing. I told her I was just there to look, and she said, well, come on, I'm going to show you camera because we're short-staffed. And so she taught me how to do camera live across Canada, and I fell in love with it. And I stayed there till about 8 or 9 o'clock that night, and I was there every day from 7 in the morning till about 8 or 9 for a week doing camera. I just fell in love with it.
You just loved it?
Just loved it.
And
it is the greatest thing.
How old were you?
I think I was 9 or 8.
No, seriously, come on. Stop pulling my leg.
Well, let me see. I'm 40 now. That was 20 years ago, so I must have been about 15 or 16.
Math is not your strong suit, so you thought you'd go into television. Is that it? And the other thing, it would seem to me about working at a station like Rogers, and I think we find this even in commercial stations if they're small, is you can experiment more, can't you? I mean,
do everything.
You can try everything and do everything. And if you make a mistake, it doesn't end your career.
Right.
That's right, yeah.
Absolutely.
So was your experience that it was a real outlet for creativity?
Oh, absolutely. It was. I can't help but recommend this to anybody who wants to volunteer, especially someone who's thinking of going into the business, into the media business. This is the greatest thing to go and try. Mm-hmm. And we have people that are retired that come afterwards, and I mean, it's just great. Interesting. Can I tell you a story?
Sure, of course. We love stories.
John Jeremy was a host actually was on the first clip, and he worked on Parliament Hill, and he knew I knew a lot of the politicians then. He did a show for us. He did a number of shows for us on politicians, and he also did the all candidates meeting. And one day we were at one of the days we were at the City Hall, and he was up on a platform, and I was floor directing at the time. And about 2 minutes to air, he said, "I don't have any water, Arthur." And I said, "Oh, I'll run and get some from you." Tore my headset off, ran into the washroom, filled up a huge jug of water, ran back, and as I was running back, I wanted to jump up on the stage that he was on, and I tripped, and I dumped the whole bucket of water on him about a minute to air. So he sat through the whole show. It was lucky I caught him just from the waist down. He sat through the whole show in this little puddle of water, okay? But what a trooper. I mean, we laughed about it afterwards, but I don't think during he was so happy. So I don't know if something like that would end your career.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so.
But that's my
I would
favorite
hope
story.
not. But but as soon as you talked about the jug of water and the running, I had a pretty good idea what was coming next. How much longer, Arthur, are you going to volunteer?
I think, to about 100 and something. I'm not quite sure.
I had a feeling. We're getting back to that math again.
Yes. And my Tom Green story is I locked him out of the studio one time. He was doing a show he was in a band. He was in that band, and he was taking over the interviews. He was stepping on everybody else's interview after he did his interview, and I was floor directing at the time, and I caught him by the arm and said, "You have to come with me for a second." And he said, "Oh, okay." And I put him outside the door and locked the door so the rest of his band members could go ahead with their interview. But he was all over the place, just like he is. Just as you would anticipate.
So that's not a 7-second delay. That's that's
live.
Like a 7 minutes, 7 hour delay.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just lock the guy out. Well, congratulations to both of you, and really fun talking to both of you as well. I'm glad you love it.
Love it.
Oh, we do.
As much as you do.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
yes,
you bet.
thanks.
And that always shows on air when you love it. So,
yes.
yeah, it's very satisfying. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
That's Terry Tucker, Operations Supervisor at Rogers TV, and Arthur Levitan has been volunteering at the station, we think, you can never be sure about Arthur as it turns out, for 20 years.